This is Kirk Hilliard.
And it's Rusty Bird, the Kirk and Byrd Show, and we are going to review the VHSL state championships. And we've got two of the most knowledgeable people on basketball in this state, period, in the discussion. We got Matt Hatfield, and we got Larry the Legend from Ballin, VA. Matt's from VA Preps. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're the second team.
I can't be mentioned in the same, category as Matt Hatfield. That's an honor, but I ain't that good.
We all aspire to be as good as Matt.
We all just blessed to know that man.
I follow everything you write. I tweet, all that stuff. Whenever you always share something. But and then real quick, Matt's VA Preps, and there's also Hatfield Sports. But Larry, plug your podcast, which is one of the best.
It will be Ballin in VA at Morrison Media on YouTube. It's also Ballin in VA _804 _podcast, Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook.
And you've got swag, right? You got gear that you're selling. It's really nice. I've seen it.
Thank you. Yeah, I got all of that. That's on. You can go to my link tree and also morrisseymedia.com.
Okay. Yeah. And then let's give Matt a chance. Matt, why don't you promote? He mentioned some of the things, but you're doing a lot of stuff, bro. Let the folks know. I know you work with ODU and you do a lot.
Well, I appreciate that. And I got to get a background like Larry's. He's got that cool stuff in the background, all these different pictures and players and teams. That's pretty neat. I like back there. But they can check us out on Twitter. Yeah, you bet. And check us out.
I'm actually at the Siegel Center. That's not a big background.
I've just got my man cave back here, which is all. I haven't cleaned it since I've been in every city in America. It feels like from Huntington to Pensacola to Richmond and here and there. But they can check us out on Twitter, Hatfield Sports, VA Preps Rivals on Twitter, VirginiaPreps.com, or part of the Rivals Network powered by Yahoo Sports. All kinds of stuff up there. And if you give me a follow on there, you can see my articles and all the different content we tweet out and share through social pages and all that different good stuff. I'm still trying to learn the Instagram and all the reels that these kids put up and things of that nature with the photos. I've got tons of photos on my computer and haven't had a chance to publish them all because I'm going from place to place to place. So maybe when I get some downtime here in the spring, people can see some of those.
Right. Yep. All right. Well, cool. So what we want to do is we want to talk about these the last week of high school basketball in the state of Virginia, which has been tremendous. And we can probably the one person that that we knows every class, knows winners, losers, who were in the semis, players, and that's you, Matt. So we're gonna kind of just guide you through the questions, but we'll just chime in when we've seen someone or we have an opinion that's probably not valid. But we're gonna lean on you a little bit. And let's start, because let me just say this, folks. Because somebody, and we'll talk about this, is a class 2 or 3 or 4, that does not mean that they are not as good or better than somebody that's class 4 or 5 or 6. And we had a coach after the class 2 state championship voice his opinions on that. But let's start with class 1. We'll start with the girls. Matt, Larry, any of your thoughts and what about those teams? Tell us who won and what you may know about them.
It was good.
For me?
Yeah.
Either if you know something.
No, we'll let Matt go first. Let me.
Class 1 on the girls' side. This was one that I got wrong. I did predictions we put up on our VIP board on Virginia Preps, and I think last year I got like 11 out of the 12 right or something of that nature. This year I was 3-3 on the girls, 5-1 on the boys. And the boys one I got wrong was one against my 757 area code, was looking good until it went the other way and a buzzer beater happened, which we'll get to in a bit. But and I thought that was the hardest game to call in a lot of respects between that one and the Class 6 game as well. But it ended up being in Class 1 girls. Rappahannock County beat Eastside 70-65. And it's strange. In 2 or 3 of these games, I was maybe as impressed or most impressed with an individual player on a losing team. And there was a girl for Eastside named Aslan Hammonds who, doing some research, preparing for some of the games on the NFHS network, I knew she was really good, but she had 37 points. She had a couple of steals in 32 minutes. 15 of 31, and she was just making it look like trick shot after trick shot. She's hitting off balance shots, leaning right, left. But Rappahannock County won simply because they out-rebounded them by 16, and they had all 5 starters in double figures, including 2 with double-doubles and Summer Shackelford and Chloe Jenkins. I thought this game would be played in like the 40s or 50s because to get this far, Rappahannock County had to play a low-scoring defensive slugfest that, let's just be perfectly blunt, was sort of a yawner, beating Buffalo Gap 42-41. And then they go out there in the state championship game, and they sizzle in the first quarter. They should have 50% in 2 quarters in a state championship game and win 70-65. So that one was entertaining to watch and might have been, it wasn't the best girls game, but I would say it was either the second or third best girls game of the 6.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. No, that's good. Good insight. Anybody else have a thoughts or had they get a chance to see those games?
That game yesterday, that growing up game against Woodside, oh my God. I was wrong because I remember I saw Matt talking about it with Julian, and it was crazy how Patriot and Roanoke controlled the entire game.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they went on a 27-3 run.
Mm-hmm.
Like the game just switched. And I don't know what, Coach Welsh told them in that huddle, but whatever he did, it worked.
Yep. And
that game was worth every bit of my money that I could have paid for the weekend. So I was satisfied. Even though 7-5-7.
Well, it's funny thinking about this, Larry and Rusty and Kirk. I mean, it was the first, and I've seen a lot of classic finishes, state championship games. It reminds me of a couple games from years ago involving 7-5-7 teams. One with Kings Fork and William Fleming, where Kings Fork was down big, and Fleming with the likes of Troy Daniels, who played at VCU, NBA career, Jamel Hagans, who played at Delaware. They came back. They had Kings Fork come back on them with Jaquan Parker, Jamar Wirtz, Devontae Gardner, and Jay Copeland in that group win it. Derek Wright hit a big 3 in that one. I was sitting next to Seth Greenberg, and you could just see it coming from a mile away. And also, IC Norcom against John Hanley one year, where literally Norcom scored about 20 unanswered, and Woodside scores 25 unanswered in this game. Literally, PH Roanoke had a 16-point lead in the third quarter evaporate, and then Woodside had a 9-point lead with under 6 minutes to go evaporate.
No.
Yes.
By 2 different teams in the same half. And I was sitting there. I thought both coaches did a lot of good things throughout the game. Stephon Walsh for Woodside, Jack Esworthy for Patrick County Roanoke. But then at the end of the game, I think both of them got caught up in the craziness where I'm sitting there going, Woodside's got 3 timeouts. You got to use one here. And then Patrick County Roanoke used their last one with a minute to go. And I'm sitting there going, what do you do if Woodside scores and you don't have a timeout? So I was sitting there, I was wondering why they used the timeout and why Woodside didn't use the timeout. And then the ending was just absolutely crazy. And if you go back and watch that last play, I didn't see it live. The kid that drove and missed the shot for PH Roanoke, Cindy Webb, who had a heck of a year, multi-sport standout, believe it or not, and I don't fault him one bit for going when he did. It was about 10 seconds to go. I thought he made the right move.
He made the right move.
Made the right move. But in the corner, wide open, is Brooks Deary for Patrick County Roanoke, who's made 107 threes this year. If he kicks that ball to him in the corner, I have no idea if he makes it or not, but I could just see everybody's faces go, oh no. And then Woodside goes with their best player down the court, doesn't finish it, and Christian Greenlaw puts it back to win the game. A football kid going to Hampton University, making a play that's probably going to be what he's remembered for in high school his entire life on the basketball court in his last game. I mean, it was a wild game and one of the top 5, maybe, well, top 10 for sure, but maybe even top 5 finishes I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, did you see it live?
For me, I was there. Yeah. Okay.
So I had a question. It was like when he missed the layup, that was a good take, by the way. But it seemed like that rebound and putback, I think maybe the Patrick Henry Roanoke kids were caught up in that it was the buzzer and didn't box out. Because I felt when he missed that, they had position. He just in great putback, Mile, but that was the best game in my opinion. So
it was.
The thing that got me, I sat with Larry in the first half. Second half, I went to go see my cousin. His kids went there, and his wife is a counselor there. So I'm sitting there and we're talking about the game. But at that particular point, when I saw Patrick Henry miss the shot and Woodside going down, I remember just looking at the clock thinking it's 6 seconds. And I thought, okay, as long as you have time, don't throw like a half court shot. I've seen people not have a really awareness and they like pull up at half court. And he went all the way to the basket. He missed it, but then there was time for the young man to catch the rebound, pump, and lay it in. And I was like, that was the longest
5 seconds.
5 seconds.
It was.
That's the first thing I said to Matt after the game. I was like, that was the longest. I mean, I really
he was able to go down the court, shoot the ball, miss the shot, and then grab the rebound, reverse layup. That's a long time.
And it wasn't even close. Like we saw the ball leave his hand. We saw it go in.
Backboard, right.
I thought like you would at least maybe have one of those, like we have to go look at the replay. Like the ref was like,
it was good.
It was good.
Yeah, by about 0.5, and we watched the replay. It was about 0.5. And I thought in live time it was good as well. But you got to give Greenlaw a ton of credit, because how many times do you see big kids sprinting up the floor? Sometimes they're going to get caught up and just stand around. You see it in the NCAA tournament. We'll watch it coming up with the March Madness. They'll sit there and watch the guard pull up and shoot a shot or go to the 10, and they just stop. He sprinted down to try to follow it. Yeah.
That is a great point, man.
And see, you got to think about this too. And there's a couple of times you got to think about in 2015 when Megan Walker, their first championship, was she ran down and blocked the girl's shot. Had she didn't do that, Midlothian would have been winning the championship that year. Then you got to think about when I.C. Norcom beat Petersburg the same way. The layup shot at the buzzer.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I want to make sure we don't gloss over Lancaster, if you're PA, defeating George Wythe. So that was a big win for them. Matt, give us a review of that one. I don't know if you guys saw it or not. I was not able to see that one.
Yeah, I was calling that one, in fact. And Troy Henderson, sophomore guard for them, was superb. 30 points on 11 of 16 from the floor, 6 rebounds. He scored 11 of his team's 13 points in the third period. And he just had the ball on a string, was knocking down jumpers, some contested jumpers. It was a game that it didn't have the pedal to the metal tempo that we thought it might. I figured it could be a game played in the upper 60s to 70s. The final score is deceiving. It wasn't really a 62-40 beatdown, but give Lancaster a ton of credit. They go undefeated under second-year coach Dwayne Penn, and they won every game this year by double digits. And that includes beating Cape Henry, a private school, includes beating Life Christian, a private school, that are both well thought of with talents over the years. I mean, they took on all the comers at the small school level and some out of conference, out of district opponents from the Northern Neck. They played some teams there and then some outside of it. I thought, and I watched them live in late January against Bruton, a Class 2 school. I thought they were going to be hard to beat, but then they took down Franklin and Alta Vista in the state quarters and semis respectively, and they did so with ease. So a job well done. They were as good as advertised and impressive throughout. And they probably do get forgotten about at the Class 1 level from some outside that little small town there in Lancaster.
Yeah.
Okay. So we would normally go to Class 2 next, but let's go and skip to Class 3. We're going to save Class 2 for a little bit later. Let's go to Class 3 and the teams playing in that, and that's a quality level of talent and coaching. So, Matt, do you want to start? Larry, we'll let Matt start, and then Larry, you chime in.
Yeah, because I mean, Hopewell was a really good 804 team all year long. That they've been in this spot before a couple of years ago, one during the COVID shortened season under Coach Elvin Edmonds, and Cameron Mize had a really strong game with 24 points in this one. And Hopewell gets down 17 after one quarter of play to Northside, who started out the year just like gangbusters. They won their first 25 or 26 games. They lost to Cave Spring in the region championship, who they beat twice during the season. They lost to them twice last year, including on a late shot in the state semis. They get revenge in the state semis against Cave Spring, and here they are in the championship, and they're looking what they're going to cruise here. Execution, ball movement. They shot in the first quarter alone, guys. It was remarkable. They shot over 70%, 78.6%, and then the Hopewell run comes, and they get behind the crowd, and Northside shot 7.7%, couldn't make a basket. Hopewell gets up 4 in the fourth quarter, and this game changed when a kid named Kai Logan off the bench hit a corner 3. That was the game-changing play. And Northside was able to just make some huge plays down the stretch, particularly their 2 sophomores, Cy Hardy with 17 points, 5 assists, and Michael Harvey with 16 points. I think that they were in some close battles throughout the year, and they didn't flinch. It was a little bit like the Woodside Patrick Henry game in terms of the swings, but Northside was able to just I think, show enough offensive flow late, whereas Hopewell, once they lost the lead after getting it back, I thought they got a little fatigued. And I think both teams will be back in the hunt again because they played 6-7 years ago, state semis, and Hopewell won in overtime. That's one of those games you play 10 times. It might go 6-4 or 5-5. They were very close and evenly matched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even see that game, but I followed you again, on Julie's podcast. You said that you thought Northside was going to be the one that was going to pull it out. So I didn't get the chance to see that game.
Well,
my pick actually was 68-62, and it ended up being 58-52. It ended up being a little bit lower scoring defensive in the second half. And I mean, give Hope a lot of credit. They're going to be back. Mize was the only guy from the outside that hurt Northside, and I think they knew down the stretch, get the ball out of his hands, we'll find a way to win. The thing about Northside real quickly, guys, it's most impressive. They've got 8 guys that average more than a steal a game, and all 5 starters shoot over 50% from the floor. So when you're efficient like that and you defend like that, you're going to be able to recover from losing the lead. And a lot of these teams in the state championship, they don't have the resolve to recover from, oh my gosh, we just let a 17-point lead evaporate.
Yeah. On that particular game, I sat at the press row right up front so I could get a good view of it. And I'd like to think I wasn't biased. I was kind of pulling for Hopewell just because I know the area more familiar, but I hadn't seen the team all year. Had never really heard of Northside, at least this year. I mean, I knew of the program, but I got to say this, man. Again, I've been an official for over 20 years, 25 years, and at this particular game, I was very disappointed in the officiating. It looked to me like 2 of the 3 probably shouldn't ref another state finals again. I don't know what association they were from. I do not like to criticize officials, but there wasn't consistency, and I thought some of the calls they just weren't. I felt like at critical times they went against one particular team, and then it didn't feel like it was balanced. And then there were just some calls like I didn't understand them when the way they it was that one mid-court one kind of right in front of me, in front of the Hopewell, almost mid-court, and the guys both tripped over each other, but the one guy I thought initiated, and they called the foul on Hopewell. And so, the one thing I do when officials make calls is I do this. I look to see the person makes the call, but I look at his partners right away. And I can tell in their eyes if they're in agreement, because I saw on that particular call, 2 guys went up, one guy passed it off, and I could tell right away. Once he made the call, the guy in the center of the trail, said, you got it because it's officially your call, you're in the middle. He made the call and he started shaking his head, yes, but it was one of those shakes like, I don't agree, but okay. And I could tell, you had a different call, bro, but you're not going to debate it. That was his call, that was his area. And it was just too many calls like that. And I was just these guys look like they've never worked at this level, and they weren't prepared and on the same page. What I mean by that is when I contrast that to the Class 6 game, you could tell those guys had an amazing pregame. Was it Class 6 or was it the Class 5? Which one did they let them play? I think it was Class 5. It was Class 5 because those guys let them play. Who was it, Class 6? It was one of those. I was just going, okay, these guys know what they're doing. It was a very physical game, and so it was 5 because I remember it was physical. They were letting them play, and I was like, these guys, I could tell. I don't know if they had watched the other game and talked about it, or it was just it was a great pregame, and that was when I was like, we're gonna let them play because these are the 2 best teams. We don't want to get involved, and this is one of the higher levels, and they called it very much like a college game. And so those are just my thoughts on 3. The other thing about 3 that stuck out to me is the basket that was in front of Hopewell. So I guess that may be the southern side or eastern side of the gym. It felt like people all weekend could shoot a little better at that end. I don't know if it's the site the way the background, but Northside was crushing in the first half, hitting threes. You know, it felt like they could go to the basket a little easier and just do some things that their trajectory and lighting. I don't know, and then on the other end, Hopewell couldn't make a basket. But then in the second half, I felt like that was kind of reversed until the Northside kid hit the big three in the corner. I just don't know. And I just kind of was wondering, like, is it something about that? We know it's harder to shoot in the big gym, but that was just another observation I made about that particular end of the court and several games appearing to be a little difficult.
Matt, was there any talk at the press conference about that? Maybe officiating?
Not Class 3, but the Class 6 game. Sherman Rivers was a little bit outspoken about some of the calls he felt that did not go in his team's favor against Hayfield. And just looking at the foul count, it didn't seem like it was that drastic in the Class 3. And in the Class 6, it ended up being the foul count was 14-18. So the numbers would bear out that it wasn't necessarily one-sided either way. I mean, there was I thought in the Class 5 game, late there was a makeup call, which I hate because then you have a bad call and then you go ahead down the court and you make another bad call. To me, it's not just because one team got the short end, you don't then make another bad call. It doesn't fix things. So that part I didn't like. And there was you get different crews. And I think it's sort of like what we see sometimes in the collegiate level. I saw it on the women's side doing some, play-by-play with ODU women's basketball. Some of these crews don't necessarily always work together and you get in tournament time. And I think it does affect the flow of games. And when you have review and some things you can't review, it's hard. I mean, it's not an easy situation. And there was I don't know that it necessarily cost any team in terms of an outcome. Fortunately, there wasn't any one of those controversial, which we sometimes get in the playoffs for the NBA or we get in the tournament for college basketball. So that, of all the things with the fishing, that was the most fortunate part, was there wasn't anything that was so egregious that it was, affecting the outcome, one team winning or losing necessarily.
Right. Well, it could have been in that Class 5 because Matt may not want to say it, but I don't know. You're talking about the call where there was the 5 seconds.
Yes.
Bruh, like he made this. And then, look, one of the things we as officials we will say, look, if you're gonna make a call like that, and I don't know, I think it might have been called once the whole game, but that was going to decide, possibly the ending of that game. But at least when you make the call, let it be at the point where they were as close as possible. And what I mean, like, he might have had his count. We all should have been able to see it. But like when he blew the whistle, it didn't look like they were even 6 feet at that point, And then you look all game, I felt like Woodside was in their grill, and I was like, I remember seeing a lot of any 5 second call. So I was going, oh my gosh, please don't let this be the outcome. But then you're right. I said, the second I saw later on, I said, that's a makeup call.
Well, and one thing I like to see, and I hope I'm not stealing any thunder here for Larry or Kirk, maybe bringing this up later on in the mission here, is that I would like to see in high school basketball, one thing I'd like to see added is we're not going to review every call, but end of game buzzer calls. If you have the technology to review them, it could be end of the half or end of a quarter, or in this case, the Woodside game. It would have been horrifying if that shot was good after the buzzer and they counted it, or they ruled it not good and it was good. That would have been just tragic for either team, Patrick Henry or Woodside. I think if you have the technology, utilize it in those spots, especially in a state championship where it could determine the outcome. I think that's something we should look at, because again, it's only going to take 5 minutes to do. And in that spot, it's worth doing if it had been something that could have determined one team losing or not.
Well, the NFHS does have that as a rule that they are allowed to use, but it's up to each individual state. And if they do it, they usually just do it. Now, other states, they usually just in the playoffs.
I think with that 5 game, that may have been more dependent on when the clock started. Did it start properly? Because they clearly made the shot before the buzzer, which is loud at VCU, and the red went off. But I didn't want to gloss over the Class 3 girls. I wanted to mention, was anybody surprised about Carroll County? I mean, we're up here, we're rooting for Brentsville, Coach Delaney. But was anybody surprised? I mean, Carroll County is a great team.
They're great, and they can compete at the Class 4, Class 5 level. That girl, Alyssa Irvin, had 29 points, 8 rebounds, 8 steals, almost had a triple-double. And the thing that was astonishing to me, I didn't call this game, but I watched it. Carroll County, their third leading scorer, basically, Jalen Hagee, went over 1,000 points in her career. So think about that. She's the third option, essentially, and she gets 1,000 points. And Brentsville had a nice run here, beating Meridian to get there after losing to them, I think, 11 straight times. Kudos to them. But the second quarter did them in. They got outscored 21-2. It was about a 6-7 point game after one period. Second quarter, you could just tell Carroll County had a different gear to them, and they weren't going to be denied. They could compete at the 4 level. They have in the past, in the 5 level, and be if not a state championship team, certainly a semifinalist or quarterfinalist.
Absolutely. That's my same thoughts. Again, I'm pulling big time for Brentsville. But I don't think the players or the coaches are surprised that they might have lost. I just think the way they lost they probably felt a little disappointed, maybe just because of, the difference, but in the score. But again, that team has a lot of kids going to college. They had a lot more height and they were experienced. That was Brentsville first. It makes a difference being on that college floor and that much of a crowd. It does.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Larry? I don't know if you got a chance to see the Brentsville Class 3.
No, I was sitting with the Monacan coaches, and he was telling me about the young lady from Carroll County and what the little bit that I saw. Yeah.
And I agree with Matt. And we'll get to something. That. Player-wise, absolutely can play with anybody, but team-wise, yes, they could play with almost any level in this state. So let's go now to Class 4.
Well, let's take we talked about 5 boys. So let's just talk about Princess Anne defeating LC Byrd. So 13 title, Princess Anne just rolls. I wasn't able to watch that game. I'd like y'all's feedback on that.
Okay, can I go first on this?
Sure.
Because I only saw Princess Anne like 2 times this year. From everything I heard this season, especially going into the postseason, is that Princess Anne team was not very good. I'm talking as they typically are. And just like last year, I've heard that like my brother went to see him in the regional semis or regional finals, and his thought was like other coaches just kind of froze up at the end of the games and didn't know how to handle stuff. Because I've heard that there's no way they should have even made it 2 states. Okay. But once they got there, they were comfortable. But I'm hearing Menchfield and other teams in Class 5 should have advanced. I don't know.
Yeah.
Matt, you've seen them. They're from your area.
Yeah, listen, it's not wrong. I was out of town when they played Norview in the state quarters at Norfolk State, but my radio colleague, Coach Ed Young, and some other people that were there commented to me, Norview was up 11, didn't close them. And
that's the game. Yep,
didn't close them. And if you leave the door open for Darnell Dozier, he's going to come at you like a caged dog, wanting that T-bone steak, basically.
Yeah.
Same thing happened in state semis versus Menchfield. They're down 7, and they rallied back with their pressure defense. They really only had one major scoring threat, which was Zakiah Stevenson. She had 24 to 53 points, 5 steals, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. But it's funny, you had that fracture. People say this was not the year. Darnell Dozier got fired up by that, and he now has 13 rings, as many rings basically as fingers and toes he's going to have when he's all said and done here. And then there was another fraction of people when I got to the Siegel Center on Saturday morning to call this, they were like, P is going to win this easily. And Larry can touch on this, I'm sure. I told people because people up there told me, listen, don't count out this LC Byrd team. They beat Glen Allen twice, who had beaten Princess Anne, and Byrd played them close a few years back in the state playoffs in the championship round, in fact. So this was an evenly matched game, and really it could have gone either way if not for a couple of plays and PA's defense shining through in the closing minutes.
Yeah, it's the closing minutes of their last 3 games that I've heard from everybody. Go ahead, Larry.
No, I agree because I picked, I had a personal investment in this LC Byrd. So I figured I talked to Shabette all summer, and I told her this was the year to beat Princess Anne. I've said that. I went down to the VA preps, not the VA preps, but it was a game at Churchland. All the girls played that stat classic. I was there, and I watched Glen Allen handily beat Princess Anne. Mm-hmm. But then I also watched Byrd girls beat Glen Allen twice. So, but again, that pressure defense that Princess Anne put on them. And and not only that, it was those free throw shooting too. I think Byrd probably between both teams, they missed like 10 free throws in the last 5-6 minutes of the game. So that was really the telltale of that. Because if Byrd actually was up 42-38, if they had made their free throws, they would have been up like 6 to 8 points. That would have put a little bit more pressure, and I believe the time would have ran out for them.
Yep.
But again, that pressure they put on those girls, and they had 5 guards that you would think they could handle the ball, and they just couldn't handle the ball. Every time they just kept going to the side. Like the Navy commit, Kaya Smith. You had Trinity Dale. She was all Central Region Player of the Year. And I just felt like, I don't know why they took the ball out of their hands. I don't understand.
Here's a thought I had. I want to get y'all's input on this is with the quarterfinals being 8 teams, the 2-4 teams, the 4 and 4. In Division 5, for those regions, the Hampton Roads and the 2 Hampton Roads regions playing each other to get to the state final. And boys, I mean, I thought that Woodside was the most battle tested. If you're going to get through those quarterfinals, it's the best draw of the whole, all 6. And girls, do y'all agree with that?
I think so. More times than not, although there's some years where it doesn't always bear out. And as you look at the boys' side, that Region 5B is just, I took some flack on Facebook.
It's the best region in all of them.
Listen, there's a couple of people out there, a couple of coaches that are mad at me that I said the losers in the first round in 5B
saw that
could win 5A. Right. And I'm sorry, they could. I'm not saying they will, and it's a guarantee or definite, but it is. Yeah, and I'm not saying that. I mean, it's just honest to goodness truth. And you listen, Bethel, you know them quite well, Rusty. 7th seed, they didn't make it. They took 6th. You put Bethel in 5A or C or D, they could certainly win a playoff game. But I mean, all you have to look at is the last 2 years in 5A, a team under 500 won the region. That is nothing against Bayside a year ago as a 7 seed or Green Run as a 6 seed this year. And Green Run's been in a couple state championship games. They've won one. Kenneth Harris has a great program. But this was one of probably regular season-wise, one of his worst teams, and he won the region championship by 25 points, got the states, played Maury close. It got away late. They're going to be good in years to come because a couple of his better guys were sophomores, but they were kind of the underdog team to get through. And you don't usually see that in other regions around the state. And if they were to reconfigure it, which they need to do, there's a lot of reconfiguring that needs to be done across the board. See some things happen differently. And then you saw it, you know this, Larry, in Region 5C, the Richmond teams, they shifted from 5B to 5C. And it feels like Class 5, you made a good point, Kirk, of all the divisions, there's more differences. I mean, take Patrick and Roanoke, for example. They had to play a sub-region just to qualify. And William Fleming, who beat them, William Fleming, who beat them twice, had to play Albemarle just to get in. And then you have other teams from other districts in 5D. They just get basically an automatic you're in. Like, that's not fair to William Fleming, who had they seen Patrick and Roanoke might not even get through. Now, Patrick and Roanoke showed they were worthy. I thought some people were a little surprised. I picked them to beat Woodside by 2. They were up 17 in that game. But the point being, 5D, the way they get their 8 teams makes no sense to me. 5C, 5B, 5A, they all have different, levels and teams. And, Mitchville goes 22-0. They get a bye, and your reward is you get Woodside. That's not right. Like last year, Kickatan's on a 20-game win streak. Willie Gauze has, in my opinion at the time, the team to win Class 5, but pretty much it was them in Highland Springs, I was thinking, along with Maury in that mixture last year. And their reward is you get Mitchville in the semifinals at Scope. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So you guys, that's leading to what we'll talk about a little later. But yeah, that's absolutely true. So now let's. I want to talk about. So we've covered pretty much.
Let's go to 4.
4. Okay, let's go 4.
6, because 4. We'll start with the boys. Varina went on a huge run against Kings Fork in the 4th quarter. Otherwise, Kings Fork, through 3 quarters. And I thought Kings Fork was going to win. So hats off to Varina. 2nd state championship in a row. And they're killer in boys basketball. But they
didn't play Kings Fork in the final.
Semis.
Right.
Right. That's what I meant to say if I misspoke. But also, they played, I thought Glass could win this. I'm not surprised that I predicted, Rusty, if we go back in our predictions, I predicted that the winner of Varina Kings Fort would win it all. And I think I picked Kings Fort. But Glass was a team, Matt, Glass was a team that was very, very good. Their only losses were, I believe, to Northside. And was it Spotswood or Penlaird or was it Spotswood? They were unbelievable.
They were great. And Glass was down in this game by 12. And this might go to something we're talking about as far as coaching adjustments. One of the best coaching adjustments I saw the entire tournament was DJ Best. I thought when he put in the guard coming off the bench, Dexter Harris, it changed their whole flow because Varina was getting ready to pull away from them. Mm-hmm. And Varina was in that hellacious. One thing I was worried about for Varina, I picked them to win this game, and I'm sure Larry knows this too. I thought that Kingsport game, they were probably a slight underdog in that game, but they had a huge quarter. Jerome Conway was unbelievable in the game. And you felt like KJ Weiss was due to go off possibly in this game. But they had a little bit, you wondered about the emotional hangover effect from the game with Glass. And the thing like that Eastside girls game, I was thoroughly impressed in defeat by Omandre Harris, number 3. He had 31 points, 4 steals. If this kid doesn't cramp up, you never know what happens. And Varina, what saved them here was their board play and their athleticism. A couple of those multi-sport guys like Miles Derricott hitting the glass. This was a great game. And I think in some respects, you can talk on this, Larry, I'm sure, it gets forgotten about because of that thrilling finish with Woodside, Patrick Henry. But this game had layers to it. It had swings, some good coaching maneuvers. I thought Kenneth Randolph kept his guys composed as Harris was starting to take over the game. There was some really neat twists and turns of this game because this was a battle.
That guy, Harris, he was in his bag, man.
Yes.
And to me, as I always say, I know Steph Welsh, will probably say otherwise, but I always talk about Kenneth Randolph, one of the best coaches in this state, especially when it comes to adjustments. Yep. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing he can do to them. And I talked to Coach Randolph Friday, and he told me it was a backstory. I did not know that Glass and Varina played in the fall, but they didn't have any of their football players. It was just KJ White and Conway. And Glass beat the JV and the varsity. So, and they said they were the real state champions. They was the real state champions. So, of course, Varina had some get back. So they said, okay, well, we're going to get to the Siegel Center, so we'll see y'all there. And that's what ended up happening. But I'm telling you, that kid put on a show for Glass. I don't know where he came from. I never even heard of him. But he put up on one of the best performances I've seen in any final, in any classification. I'm sorry. To me, that was that kid probably missed his first 3 shots. And after that, he was on a roll.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's great. On the girls' side, I think I overlooked Hampton high school girls, even though they have a great tradition. Because
year too.
It's because I was thinking Minchfield all year for PD girls, but they're in different classes.
Yep.
And so they had 3 losses, but 2 of them were to Minchfield, and the other was to the team. What is it, out of Charlottesville? St. Bell's something.
St. Anne's Bellsfield.
That's where
Laura Johnson.
That's a private school?
Yeah.
It's a private school. So, I know how great Hampton can be. So, and the other thing I kept hearing was how strong the Kings Fork girls were. So I just didn't know if they would even, that would work, be a big, if they would get by, and Kings Fork girls beat Matoka, by 30. Hampton beat Hanover, but I just assumed, because everything I heard, that the Kings Fork girls would advance. And then, Hampton got in the finals and played Pulaski and won by 12. So, I was happy being from, Hampton, Virginia, but it just snuck up on me,
Yeah. Well, she's building a tradition. I mean, I know Dwight Vick talks a lot about Shawna Bailey, but she's won a lot, and she's got a lot of momentum in that class 4, don't you think, Matt?
Oh, she's done a wonderful job there. And the young lady for her, Kennedy Harris, if you were there watching this game or watching it online, 35 points, 5 of 9 from 3, 8 of 8. How about that step back 3 she hit, Larry? The place went nuts. Yes. It was like, all right, here we go. Boom.
I think she scored the first 20 points.
Yeah, she
Wow.
was on fire. And it looked like they were going to run away from Pulaski. They were up 20 in this game, and Pulaski roared back, got it down to 5. And then I'll tell you what impressed me. As good a scorer as Harris was, and sometimes you'll see this in a tournament game, kid gets off for 25, 30 games. She made 2 really big passes, one of which was to the number 32 girl, Katie Perry, who finished it inside. So she was able to survey the situation, really smart. Her IQ came into play and kicked in, and she said, all right, I know they're looking at me. I'm going to make a play as a playmaker and a distributor here. And she did that. And I thought at that point, even though Pulaski was starting to make some outside shots, they had 2 girls in Kesslyn Sechrist, who's going to Indiana State, number 12, who had 22 and 12, and the number 13, Hannah Kiefer, had 23. They got going. And I think it's a little bit natural. This might have happened a little bit in that Woodside PA tournament game too. You play so many battles in the PD all year and teams you see around a 7-5-7, and you see Pulaski, and on film, they might not wow you athletically and speed-wise. And then you say, well, wait a second. Lake Taylor played them 5-6 years ago, and they blasted them by 40 or 50, and you let your guard down when you get up 20. Or maybe at the beginning of the game, you don't come out with the same level of intensity. I know some people didn't like, I used the line on the Woodside game, I thought it was, you wondered a little bit, and some kids may not admit this, or coaches, do you underestimate a team a little bit because you feel like we've seen better speed and stuff, but I thought Hampton kind of did that, let their guard down. They were able to ratchet it back up, and they recovered in big part because of Kennedy Harris.
Yeah, because their speed, because Pulaski County speed was very deceptive. Those girls didn't look like they was fast, but they were a lot faster than they were. So I thought that Shawna did do a great job of adjusting and getting back, because they was about to run away with this game in the second quarter. I said, they're done. This game is about to be over. But kudos to Pulaski County. I thought that coach did a fantastic job with adjusting and getting back in his team to try to compete to win that game. But shout out to Shawna Bailey, one of good friend of mine. I was rooting her on, especially after that disastrous year she had last year, because they was predicted to win it last year and everything.
That's what I heard. That's right. Yeah, that's what I heard.
Has she won 3? Has she won 3?
She's won 3, 2 as a head coach, 1 as an assistant coach. We actually had her on our radio show on 94.1 FM, and she made the comment to me and Coach Young that it felt like the stars were finally aligning, because she lost that game upset by Deep Creek 2 years ago. They had the COVID year where they won it as a co-champ, but they didn't get to celebrate it. So it was like, finally, we can get this championship and celebrate. Right. So, she's a disciple of David Six. So she learned from, from good stock there and learned from a great coach. So I think that's come through with her program. And, at Hampton High, you got, championship coaches all over the place. It was Mike Smith for football, you got Eric for boys basketball, Walter Brower before him. There's a tradition there and an expectation that you go win championships.
Yeah. And she's made her own mark, because in my mind, when I think Hampton girls basketball, it was always Coach Six. Coach Six, and he's doing outstanding at Hampton University in terms of their success they've had in the MEAC, and now they're moving to the CAA. They moved to the CAA, and so I'm always like Coach Six, but like, no, Coach Bailey, she's doing her thing, So she's now equaled him in championship victories as a head coach, right? Was she on his staff?
I think she was. Yes, she was on his staff, and that Hampton loves to win it with the Hampton people that were that played there, coached under somebody there, and there's a long tradition there, and I think they're going to stay in the hunt for years to come. I know that replacing Kennedy Harris is hard to do, but when you have a winning culture, which I think is a common theme with a lot of these programs here, there's an expectation that, all right, the players that compete with these stars in practice, whether they're on JV, varsity, they know how to get better. And that's going to probably be a storyline we'll get to with the Class 6 girls a little bit, because that team graduated 8 seniors. And I think nobody, I'll be the first to admit, saw that coming, what they did.
Yeah. So
before we go to that, I was just going to say that Shawna Bailey is smart in that former Woodside and Phoebus coach, Mike Talon, he lives right down the road from Hampton, and he does go there periodically because he's got too much energy to completely stay in retirement. But I know he helps her, and that's a big deal because he's one of the all-time greats. But moving to 6, I thought that was the second best game behind Woodside and Patrick Henry Roanoke. I know all 3 of y'all were there. Rusty, was that where you were going?
I was not.
You weren't? Rusty, were you going to go to 6 and 2?
Yeah, that's what's left, but I was going to save 2 for the end.
That's what I want to do too. Exactly.
Okay.
We'll save the best for last.
Let's 6 with the girls. Yeah, I was, because I kept hearing like, "Hey, Madison is, totally having to read." They had all those seniors. They have to. This won't be the year if you're going to get them. I thought, based on the last 2 or 3 seasons, I thought, and I know OP had some younger players, but I thought this would be the year OP would get through and win it, because Madison was supposedly down. But once the season kept going on and I kept following Madison, I was like, man, they gonna do this thing again. And so they did. Like, kudos to that program. And overall, Madison High School, man, they are producing some winners. But that football program, the girls basketball, like, that school is doing it. And so, but I was surprised that they were able, to pull it out. But I didn't know. I hadn't seen some of the other opponents that even Madison had to play. But no, that was, that's tremendous. That's 3 or 4 in a row.
It's 4 straight.
Four straight.
One of the people I bounce stuff off of for girls basketball is the guy that runs that Stat VA Classic that Larry mentioned earlier, Mike Whittington. And I asked him before the tournament, I said, like, who you got? And just kind of pick his brain. He felt like that Osborne Park Manchester game could be a championship level game in the quarterfinal round. And I know Larry can probably chime in on this from the 804. I believe one of the young ladies for Manchester, it might have been Mia Woolfolk, who's the star inside. Yeah. I think she was the one that got dinged up in the state semis, or was it another girl that got hurt?
That was Rain Wright. That was the coach's daughter. And
she was knocking down threes. Yeah. So I picked initially on the state championship. I took Manchester 51-49 in overtime. I knew it could be lower scoring because of the defense of Madison. They've won some games like 27-17 and 34-26 and things of that nature. But I was wondering about her status going forward. And this game was really good. It looked like Manchester had him where they wanted. Rasheed Wright had to like where he was. He was up, I believe it was 7 with about 4.5 minutes to go. And then all of a sudden, Madison, who's not known for offensive prowess, they get a couple shots to go. It's just that grinded out culture, championship, medal. They get to overtime, and then they've got like 3 girls. It was hard calling this game from this standpoint. They got last names that are impossible to pronounce. And my partner, Coach Jim, was like, I'm just going to say first name with Stella, Avery, and Adeline. But the girl, I believe it was Stella Gugufkas, hit that basket and won. And it was heartbreaking if you're Manchester, because you felt like this was right there. Mia Woolfolk was the matchup problem. Rain Wright was a perfect 4-4 from 3. Madison doesn't have the star power they've had during her three-peat, but they just find a way to win. And it's a little bit like what Coach Dozier does at Princess Anne. They play defense. Mm-hmm. They don't deviate from their system.
They move the ball.
Yeah, they're not flashy, but they're fundamentally sound.
Yeah, they were big last year. I remember seeing them. They were a big team.
Okay, so let me ask you all this. Going over the past 20, 25 years, there have been some tremendous girls team out of Northern Virginia. Okay, just outstanding. And so I could look at when you go to the larger divisions, not just Fairfax, but Prince William with the Forest Park girls, Woodbridge girls had a great run, Colonial Forge, but I'm just going to go Fairfax, consider that the North. If you follow girls basketball in the state over the last 20 years, and there have been some dynasties, and I'll say this. So West Springfield had a great run, okay? They won multiple championships with Carol Lawson. Yeah. Oakton had a great run. They won championships. Was that Jasmine Thomas?
Jasmine Thomas.
Yeah, Jasmine Thomas. Robinson had, a little before all of them, Robinson girls had a great run. That was like in the mid to late 90s. And now Madison is having a run. Is there another program? I'll say this. The team I felt the most unlucky is Edison. It was like Edison, if they were in 6, that's when it's a dynasty. When they were in 5, they kept
losing to they lost to Princess Anne and Hatfield. Yeah, because that one year when they had Dorena Campbell, they should have beat him.
They should have beat, yeah.
They should have beat that girl Carol Miller. Carol Miller could ball.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I always feel bad for Coach Lewis, but am I missing somebody, Matt, from the northern region, girls, like dynasty wise?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And the Oakton you mentioned, they had that great run. They had the Coyer sisters. They ran into Princess Anne one year and actually beat PA. I mean, it's really competitive up there. And even though that 34-24 game, you say, how's Madison going to win this if Manchester gets up in the 50s or 60s? They found a way. And Manchester had 2 great battles with Thomas Dale, region championship at the Scope, state semifinal. They're down big. They end up winning a game by about 12, 15 points. It's just one of those things, like, it's a little bit like Princess Anne's. I mean, there's a lot of, I think parallels, although I don't know that Madison is a player of the caliber of Zakiya Stevenson who's going to Ole Miss. And you watch them, even people that covered him, I was talking before the broadcast, I said, so what do you think? And they're like, they don't go past 7 deep. If this thing gets above 40, they're in trouble. And it looks like they're done, down 7. And they somehow found a way to get it done. It's remarkable.
Yeah. And that's why for me, Thomas Dale was my pick all year, because Thomas Dale should have been playing in the championship game, but somehow, some way, I don't really want to be too, negative on that coaching part of it, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Because Thomas Dale really, just looking at it, they are pretty much set up to win probably the next 2 or 3 championships in a row coming up. Those girls are young, and they're a deep team.
Larry, did you feel that it was a little bit like, I don't know if you follow it closely, but a little bit, I thought the Thomas Dale Manchester girls result was a little bit like last year's Patriot Battlefield boys result, where you felt like, all right, this is going to be Patriot Hayfield, and somehow the familiarity factor, having played them before. And
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, you're right, because last year, you got to remember when Thomas Dale was freshman, they beat Manchester when Manchester was the favorite. Then they come back and Thomas Dale beat them at the Scope. Right. And then this time, because it's become personal. It's a little bit backstory I don't really want to go into, but it became personal, and this time they won. So I was very shocked, because I watched Thomas Dale against Gainesville, which I thought Thomas Dale should have lost that game. Gainesville played a heck of a game that game, but here we are.
Yeah.
I think Manchester overachieved, if you ask me.
Okay.
Well, Thomas still set up too, in the next couple of years, like you said.
But I also, a team that surprised me, because the program is only 2 years old, is Gainesville. Like, I don't want to say they came out of nowhere.
Solid boys,
I don't know his name, but he can coach.
No doubt, man. They only lost to Thomas Dale by 1. The school is only 2 years old, and they beat Osborne Park once this year. So I was like, oh, they are legit. So while at one point I thought, I was like, oh, Chrissy Keller gonna win the next couple, because they got some that district, the Cedar Run, and that is, I think we're gonna have like a Battlefield Patriot for a couple of years, and the girls just getting out of that region. Or out of that district. It might be them in the district championships, the regional championships, and then the Richmond area schools are pretty
you got to
good.
think about it. In Class 6, you got Glen Allen moving over, and Highland Springs girls are moving over. So
that's right.
So, and depending on what happened with Glen Allen, how that team, what goes on with that team, that's a whole different story now.
That's another conversation, because there's a lot of movement. Kingsport's going to 5. Highland Springs going to 6. Phoebus is going to 4. But let's wrap up, or not wrap up, before we get to 2. Patriot. Patriot Hayfield. Was a game that kind of stayed. Hayfield was ahead, and they maintained it. Neither team shot well. You guys were there. What I saw, I just saw a Hayfield team that seemed more confident, and not only just confident like they belonged there, but they played their level of intensity. And Patriot played extremely hard and good defense. I just thought that Hayfield played in a manner that they were more confident. I remember, Rusty, I was texting you. They were more intense. You guys concur with that?
I haven't seen the game
before.
Yeah,
I've been there before. I mean, I think the thing, and Rusty can chime in on this too, is that we watched that game, and I think a lot of us expected a game in the 70s again. It was 75, 73 back on December 1st. We're thinking, all right, this is the classics boys game. This is going to be pedal to the metal. And they both hit 1 3-point shot in the entire game, and it was a defensive struggle. It was, in some respects, underwhelming compared to what the expectation was of this. It's going to be a running gun to the wire. And I think Carlos Poindexter realized early on, I'm going to contain Nasir Coleman and make someone else beat me. And if our guys don't hit threes, that's okay, because I've got guys that have been there before. They know how to win. Greg Jones made a couple hustle plays. David King was David King. I mean, footwork master extraordinaire, 14 points. Did what he does. And then Donovan Bass-Briscoe, I think he's the quietest guy. We know about King, Jones, and DJ Holloway, the player of the year, but Briscoe comes in 14 points, 6 defensive rebounds, and he just matched up well with Patriot. It felt like he was And losing Ashton Pratt and Braylon Whittle, he was the guy that set them over the top. And some of these Patriot players, it was good they got their feet wet on the stage, but I felt like Hayfield was just a little bit more familiar with what to do and how to react. They never felt threatened like they were going to lose the game.
Yep. They got better looks. And not that either team shot well, but Hayfield nailed some shots that they needed. And I felt Patriot just could not hit them in the defense. I mean, there was some like bounce passes. I mean, why was that a bounce pass? You take that, 10th of a second or a 5th of a second away, and that's a good open shot. But I'm not surprised. Are you surprised, Rusty?
I gotta tell you, I'm surprised. And the reason why, I mean, because if you watch the last 4 games that Patriot played.
Oh, they didn't play as good as they did against Oscar Smith. They were a beast.
They defended. They defended, yeah.
Their defense was amazing. And I remember telling Coach Rivers after each of those games, man, y'all are focused and you are peaking at the right time. Their defense was incredible. Look, Forest Park, they when it was close earlier maybe, but then, their defense was just – well, I think, let me just say this. Forest Park, before that, I think it was Potomac. I think I saw the Potomac game. Like, Potomac had just put up 82 the night before. And just Patriot shut them down. Boom. They get to Forest Park. Boom. Their defense was just crazy intense. And then I'm going, wait a minute. I told my brother, who's down there and good friends with Lansdowne's head coach, I said, this is the game that worries me, man. I've seen Oscar Smith. I saw them in the Allen Iverson Classic play Hampton High School boys. And I was like, I'm worried. I said, Lansdowne, I looked at their schedule. I seen some of it. I said, I think they can be the team that would beat Patriot. In the way Patriot held Lansdowne to 10 points in the half. 10 points in the first half. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, this defense is amazing. And then once I saw Oscar Smith, I was like, oh, they're a good team, but they beat them. So I thought after Patriot kind of figured their groove and they played well against Battlefield, and then they only lost to Hayfield by 2, I was expecting them to maybe play a little better, but to maybe even win. But I think how you started off, Matt, Hayfield's been there before. And I thought that both teams played great defense, but that great defense and the fact that that's the game I thought they were letting them play, but when they did call fouls, it was impacting Patriots' 2 big men, Jay Randall and Isaiah Vick, and that is what I think. If it could have been no worries about them getting the ball, I would have liked to seen because nobody could hit threes. Is in addition to the way Nasir was driving, if they could have just fed Randall and Vic and let them win the game, I think that could have made a bit of a difference. I don't know.
Well, 2 last things on that. Number one, you're right on about how great they were playing defensively, Rusty, but they out-rebounded Hayfield by 13, 44-31. Yet, Hayfield had as many second chance points and more points in the paint. So Patriot could not finish in the paint. And when you have that recipe with the fact you go 1 of 12 from 3 and you turn it over 20 times, which is twice as many as Hayfield, you're just not going to beat them because Hayfield's not going to make enough mistakes and shoot themselves in the foot. And in a tournament setting where there was a lot of leads blown, I mean, you see this all the time in NBA, college basketball, high school, a lead can evaporate. Hayfield having gone 32-0, having now won 59 straight against Virginia opponents. Patriot played a good schedule to get ready for this, but so did Hayfield. They weren't going to let this slip out of their grasp, and that senior trio wanting to get, their jerseys hung and be on the Wall of Fame, Hall of Fame there at Hayfield. They wanted to go out with that legacy. So it was just the matchup wasn't right there. And I think another year of seasoning, and some programs go through this. You guys have seen this for years in football or sports. I mean, I can make parallels for like Lake Center football against Phoebus. I can make parallels for Phoebus against Hampton. I can make parallels for Oscar Smith. All these different programs that Stonebridge, you have to bang your head on the wall 3, 4, 5 times until you finally kick the door down.
Yep.
And that's just the case for Patriot. And the way has been a team like a Hayfield. And their time may come in the next year or 2, or at some point. A lot of these great programs, it took Lansdowne a while to win a state championship. It took Westfield and Doug Ewell a while to win a state championship.
They'll win one. Patriot will win one.
It took Doug Craig at W.T. Woodson forever to win one, and he got it. So sometimes it takes these programs a while to get there. I mentioned Kenny Harris at Green Run. He was knocking on the door for years. He couldn't beat Hampton and Eric Brown's team. But finally, teams will get over that mountain. And I think right now, Patriots close. They're just not there yet.
Yeah. At the post game press conference, I asked Coach Poindexter about next year. He's sitting there with these three great seniors, and I said, next year, are you rebuilding or are you reloading? And this year they reloaded. Like they brought in some really good players, had a lot of talent. But I could tell in the way, I think he's such a good coach, even if they are in a way rebuilding after 20-some games, they'll have figured it out. But I think although Patriot is losing some very key seniors, I think Isaiah Vick having an opportunity to be the man, but they also had a lot of freshmen that got quality playing time and underclassmen for Patriot. I think that Patriot team, if it can get back to the finals, because remember, Class 6, a lot of the 757, 804 teams just haven't, made it to the finals, and that's what Patriot has to go through. And all the Fairfax teams have to beat each other up. I think next year could be the year, but even if it's not next year, I have no doubt that Coach Rivers is going to figure it out and get it done.
One quick thing here on this. Well, I was talking with Troy Mans at LC Byrd, who got himself a state championship. And he mentioned to me the first time his team got to VCU in that spot, the game is different, even from a coaching perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And they lost to Potomac that one year, even with Potomac's on a bad wheel. And Byrd had so many teams that were close. I mean, you think like those battles with Henrico, with DeMonte Buckingham, when they had Kenny Williams in that group.
Yeah.
And they finally got there and beat Bethel with that group with Mario Haskett and Pinky Wiley and company leading the way. I think as a coach, and Keith Honors talked about this too at Potomac, the recently retired coach who's done a great job over the years and won championships. It's a process as a program when you're building it from the coaching staff to the players and everyone down. There's layers to it, and I think they're going to get there. And there are going to be some teams in Class 6 next year to watch out for. Specifically, you mentioned Patriot, but Lansdowne out of the beach, and I wouldn't sleep on South Lakes with Jordan Scott. He is a big-time player.
And Highland Springs is moving up.
Moving up, no doubt.
South Lakes has quite a bit coming back, but I would say this. Yeah. They can build around Isaiah Vick. He's a special player.
For sure.
He blossoms, he's going to come out more on the perimeter. He's a natural rebounder. But he's going to come out further on the perimeter, and that's going to be lethal. I think Patriot will be right in it. And then, so we're going to transition to let's start. Let's
girls. The girls.
Clark County, a great team, was able to beat Central Wise, which I cannot believe is in 2 because that's in Wise County. It's obviously a big school, but there's not a lot of them. But Clark County is a great sports program. It's right just west of here. It's Berryville. It's between Loudon and Winchester. But I was not able to see that game. I think you guys both saw it, didn't you? You see it, Larry?
Yeah, I was there.
Give us your own.
That was a good game. That was a good game. It was a tug of war, man, because I think in the fourth quarter, I think the score was like 29-28 for like the last 3-4 minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a tug of war. It was like those girls, they was kind of trying to get into their offensive sets, and nobody really couldn't penetrate and couldn't get any shots off. They rebounded really well. I think both teams defensively played really well. I think those coaches made every adjustment possible that they could on each other. And it just came down to who really can actually get the one shot to kind of put them up. And once Clark County, I should say, once they got the lead, got free throws, they kind of got a little bit cushion, but anybody could have won that game. That was really, really good game to watch.
Yep. Yeah, that's a school. That's a school also. With the growth up here, going west, because there's nowhere to build in the east, west of Leesburg, they'll probably sooner or later, Clark County, be moving up to 3. So, so the best team in the state, which I'm stealing a little thunder, but John Marshall obviously just manhandled Radford, a great team, by the way, a great program. But there's not a public or private school that could be Marshall, in Virginia.
Well, they haven't beaten Marshall. Doesn't mean they can't beat Marshall. And that's what I want to get from some of my experts.
Well, first of all, let me just go ahead and say it because I thought you was ready to say something. I'm going to shut it down. I watched Paul VI play last Saturday.
There you go. There you go.
I watched Paul VI, and I've seen John Marshall several times. And in my personal opinion, from what I saw of Paul VI, John Marshall would beat them. That's just my personal opinion.
How about St. John? How about St. John? That's not a Virginia.
I haven't seen St. John's this year.
They won the Catholic League. They won the Catholic League.
Right. But just based off what I saw, but again, it's going to come down to coaching. And you got Ty White and Coach Blackwell, those guys. And you got Glenn Farrello and his outstanding coaching staff. So it'll be a tug of war, but just based off what I've seen, I think John Marshall, because PVI is not the PVI. It's like we said about Princess Anne. PVI is not the PVI of old. Normally they have about 3 to 4 guys, Division I guys they normally will have. John Marshall, man, 1 through 5, 1 through 6, man, those guys can go.
Yeah.
They can go. And I saw PVI, and I know matchups, they struggled with Stab last week. And I'm just like, if this is how y'all going to play against them, John Marshall going to roll through PBI. And I know some people in Northern Virginia might see this, but hey, that's just my personal opinion.
Let me just say that. Let me say this.
I don't care.
Wait, hold on.
I don't care.
Hold on. PVI still, at one point, weren't they like in the top 3 in the nation rankings?
They were number 1. They were
number one. And hold on. They lost to Columbus. Great program down in Miami by 2. They lost to St. John's, but it was a 2-point game. Like, that doesn't mean they can't beat Marshall.
We didn't say
they
that.
lost, but it doesn't mean they can't beat Marshall.
I'm just telling you that I've seen PVI. I'm just telling you with my own eyes. And I don't go on.
You see them at full strength because they've had some injuries. They've had some injuries.
Right. Now I saw them play PVI last year in the classic down here in Richmond. That was a game.
Right.
That was a game. So again, if PVI had some injuries last week at Virginia State, then I'll take that back.
Well, that's what I was going to, because I think if they play, I think it'd be a phenomenal game. I think
absolutely.
It could go either way. I think John Marshall, here's what I would say. You had me at first, Larry, and you lost me. I think the first 5 for John Marshall matches anybody anywhere, and it might even be better than Paul VI. That second unit for PVI, when they have guys that, and this is some people that are scouts that are telling me they have bench players that are multiple scholarship guys, and a couple of which could be pros if they develop. The freshman kid, Abraham, who is just tremendous. We know about his mom being a big-time player. They have some players, Dennis, and Darren Harris is maybe the best shooter in the country. If they play 10 times at full strength, it can go either way.
It can go either way.
I don't think it gets blown out either way. And I want to see that matchup. And in fact, I hope both coaches are listening and their fans. Let's get that matchup in the future in the Virginia Preps Classic anywhere. I don't care where it is. It'd be great to have.
It works. I think it works for not just us, but the people watching, our platforms, the way we do it. So, look, man, I really appreciate you guys. But there was one question. I think we answered it on the girls' side. But let me ask you this. And I'm sorry but when it came to the coaching job, is there anyone on the boys' side that you thought did a great coaching job?
I thought in defeat, and we talked about, the jobs that, Steph Welsh did and obviously Kenneth Randolph at Verona, and you look at Billy Pope at Northside winning a championship. It goes without saying, Ty White's the Jersey Mike Subs National Coach of the Year. Dwayne Penn went undefeated at Lancaster, and Carlos Poindexter goes back-to-back. But I will say this, in defeat, I thought DJ Best gave his team a chance to win with having a star player, and it looked like it was slipping away. And I thought he did a really good job in defeating it for Glass. And I was just thoroughly impressed, not just with a couple of his in-game adjustments to keep that thing tight, but the way he handled himself in the post-game presser. Thoroughly impressed with this guy. This is a guy that had some health issues a couple years ago. Totally impressed with what he's done out at EC Glass. So I would say I want to just shout him out because I think it goes, you lose the championship game. People are always going to say you lost because of this. And people will certainly point at teams that come up short and are expected to win, or if you blow a big lead. But I thought in defeat, I thought he pushed as many right buttons as he could. I'd like to give him a little bit of credit for that. So, he would be one that leaps to mind, even though they didn't win. Because it's easy to say you go, undefeated like Ty White and Dwayne Penn did, Coach of the Year. They won every game. They were supposed to do. They all won by comfortable margins. But I thought in defeat, he deserved a little bit of praise.
What about you, Larry? You have a
I'm gonna do like Matt did. I'm gonna have to go, gold, silver, bronze, and Ty White but he was definitely going to get the gold medal for winning National Naismith Coach of the Year, especially considering the year that he had last year, even though he won state, to completely just change that team. And that team do what they did and beat the teams that they did. You can't argue that. Secondly, of course, you can either go silver or bronze, either in any order. But I'm going to go Kenneth Randolph. And this is not being biased. It's just because, again, as I stated before, you lose 4 starters from your state championship team. And to come back and win it in the fashion that you did with a 5'7" point guard leading the way, that is remarkable. That just, I don't think Kenneth Randolph gets enough praise. And then, of course, lastly, I got to give Steph Welsh's props. 2-time state champion as a player. Then you found a way to do it again. Man, what I saw when I watched those players love playing and playing for him. And for me, I would definitely say, hey, if I had a son, I would definitely want him to play for them, for sure.
Yeah,
I would definitely love my son to play for Coach. I mean, because he took that jacket off. He had to get to say, okay, now I got to get down to dirt. And I just
he was out like a player. He was in that stance, wasn't he? He was in that stance.
Yeah, he was in that stance, man. And like I said, I got to give kudos, man. Major props to Coach Welsh, man. Outstanding job, and his staff, and most importantly, his players.
I got to give again props to John Marshall. That's kind of a given. So he would be, if we're going to do gold, silver, and bronze. But I got Steph Welsh. I don't even know what order to put these folks in. Coach Randolph, no doubt. Larry, you said it all. But I'm gonna tell you who I have to give a lot of credit to. They did not win, but he was poised, and I was frustrated for him. But Hopewell's coach.
Coach
man, I got to give him. He's in my top 3 from this weekend. I thought his kids never gave up. He was playing a great team. In Northside, and Northside was so hot that first half. And they just looked like they were not going to give up. And I thought they had some rough calls against, but he kept his composure. His kids kept their heads up, and I got nothing but respect for Hopewell, man.
With 2 freshmen out there too, and Tyrese Hunter and Nick Byrd. I mean, he did it with 2 ninth graders out there. I thought he did a heck of a job as well. Down 17. They were down 17. Looked like it was going to get away from them. Yeah. So thanks, guys. That's what I think. Nobody else is going to give folks. Again, you got to check out and follow everything Matt is doing. Ballin VA. It is tremendous. I mean, the guest he gets on that show and the way Larry just brings it home, like they're just guys sitting in the basement talking. That's so much fun, man. And they're relating to these stories. And I'm intrigued because I'm listening like this. So especially with that Highland Springs one, man, from back in the day. And then so you guys support them. Thank you guys. Thank you for what you bring. And once again, this has been a fun basketball season. And I think it's been a great year. I understand everything Julian is saying because I don't like some of the format. I wish we would maybe go to like a 14 What I wanted to do is get you guys' opinion. We've seen from different areas. And that's why I got you on the show, Larry. You bring that. You know some stuff we don't know. I want your opinion. I'm not trying to debate, but I want to break up circumstances. And so you good for that because you know your stuff. And I'm not trying to get you hot, but I don't mind. You're passionate. That's what I am. And Matt, I appreciate your knowledge and your expertise. Like, bro, you're rolling off names from class 1, class 2, class 3, boys, girls. He is
the GOAT.
You are the GOAT.
I'm nowhere near his class.
I don't know if you've ever been recruited by ESPN or other places, but I was like, please, Matt, I don't know what people pay, but don't ever leave. Like,
Matt, you are a blessing to us. You are definitely a blessing to the state of Virginia.
I'm serious, bro. When I say I am so pleased, like when I see you and you shake my hand and you know me, it's like, that's the GOAT, man. So keep doing what you're doing. I pray that you're in this business for these kids in this state for a long time.
You give a guys like myself, Rusty, and Julian, you give us, so much to look forward to because when it comes to your work and your craft, and you're very good at it, and it makes myself, and I take pride in my work and doing my
Mhm.
homework. And when I hear a guy like you can just roll them off because this is something that I've always liked to do, no, man, I tip my hat to you and keep doing the job that you're doing, because you give guys like us, a chance to think, hey, man, we one day can actually possibly do what you do. But, man, you're very great at what you do. And I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to do what I do.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
That means a lot. And likewise, to when I walk in a gym and people like yourself come over and just want to, connect and talk, it means a lot as well, because, doing the travels I've done, sometimes you feel a little disconnected from some of the games the last couple of years. But I love this. It's a passion. It's a labor of love. And it's a little bit of the monk treatment. I got a little OCD. It's a gift and a curse, some of the things I do. But, I think it's all about the kids. At the end of the day, we're all doing this. We love the high school sports. We love the kids. We like watching the stories unfold and grow. People sometimes say, "Oh, you want some?" I could care less who wins. I'm looking for good games, good storylines. Oftentimes, we're up going to get my meal after the game, but I just love the atmosphere and being out there, and it was tough the last few years having the COVID shortened years. You didn't, when something is, this because the pandemic taught us all this. When something is taken from you, you realize how much you miss it and appreciate it. So there's a great appreciation. And I want to thank also publicly all the players and coaches and people that give me the access to try to give the coverage we do.
Absolutely. I agree. And we all kind of do something a little different, but I think it works. I think it works for not just us, for the people watching, our platforms, the way we do it. So look, man, I really appreciate you guys. But there was one question. I think we answered it on the girls' side. But let me ask you this. And I'm sorry but when it came to the coaching job, is there anyone on the boys' side that you thought did a great coaching job?
I thought in defeat, and we talked about, the jobs that, Steph Welsh did and obviously Kenneth Randolph at Verona, and you look at Billy Pope at Northside winning a championship. It goes without saying, Ty White's the Jersey Mike Subs National Coach of the Year. Dwayne Penn went undefeated at Lancaster, and Carlos Poindexter goes back to back. But I will say this, in defeat, I thought DJ Best gave his team a chance to win with having a star player, and it looked like it was slipping away. And I thought he did a really good job in defeating it for Glass. And I was just thoroughly impressed, not just with a couple of his in-game adjustments to keep that thing tight, but the way he handled himself in the post-game presser. Thoroughly impressed with this guy. This is a guy that had some health issues a couple years ago. Totally impressed with what he's done out at EC Glass. So I would say I want to just shout him out, because I think it goes, you lose the championship game. People are always going to say you lost because of this. And people will certainly point at